Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends Podcast, a podcast designed to help you feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. With me today is Ben Wilkinson. He's from Collective Foot Care and Orthotics in Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada. Now, Ben has been a qualified podiatrist. In brackets, I must put chiropodist because he is in Ontario, Canada, and we don't want to upset anyone, for the past 5 years. And even though he is Canadian, he chose to study in the UK. And I'm really excited to have Ben on the podcast because we have quite an interesting history, even though it doesn't go back a huge amount of years. So, Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tyson. It's good to be talking to you.
Now, I asked you something before and I went, oh, hang on, don't answer it because I'm going to ask you again on the podcast. And can you remember how we connected in the first place?
I think that I found you through the podcast. I was just listening or looking for more podiatry content to consume, as we all do. And I was between jobs. I was looking at changing things up in my career a little bit. And I think that's when I reached out to you just to see what your advice would be, just to pick your brains a bit, I think.
Okay. Yep. That's almost
Am I on the right track?
You're definitely on the right track. So I went back because I said to you, I take notes. Whenever I have a meeting with anyone online on Zoom, I have written notes. I went back to our written notes. At the top, I had written down, you won the session with me because at the time I was saying to everybody, if you write a review for the podcast, I'll randomly draw one out once a month and you get a free session with me just to talk about anything you want to talk about. And you won it that particular month. And not everyone that wins it that I offer it to takes it up. You did take it up. And you were at a crossroads between one place you're working at and another place. And you just wanted to talk through what was the best option.
Exactly. I forgot about that. I forgot I won that talk with you. Yeah.
I know. I'd totally forgotten too. I knew we'd spoken back in, it was only 2022, March 22. But when I went back and read the notes, I had it in red writing here, won the podcast review comp.
That's right. Yeah.
It's amazing how people connect with each other. And at the time,
Definitely.
you were working between Simcoe and Hamilton.
That's right. Yeah. When I first qualified, that was actually the first year I started working. I was working part-time between the two clinics, and both of them were very different clinics in the way that they wanted me to practice and the way that they treated patients. And I think my gut was telling me to make the decision that I did, but I think I needed a little bit of encouragement. And you were part of that voice for me, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at my notes here, and I've said here, recommended quit Simcoe and work full-time at Hamilton.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And a
that's
lot has changed
exactly
since then.
that's exactly what you did. You actually, and what is, you sent me an email. It was only about a month after that. You sent me an email and you said, I quit Simcoe. I'm now working full-time in Hamilton and absolutely loving it. It was a great decision.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's funny how different clinics can work and operate. I really enjoyed my time in Simcoe, but in Hamilton, they had all the latest modalities and they had full trust in me and my treatment plans with the patients. So that makes a big difference for me being a new graduate.
Yeah, I think the other part too, you lived near Simcoe, so it was an easy job to get to, but you weren't getting paid as much, whereas Hamilton was a lot longer drive, but there were a lot more opportunities there for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that all worked out.
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
And now you actually own that clinic.
I do. Yes. So I think it's safe to say I made the right decision in the end.
Oh, definitely. And I do. I was writing through because you were telling me at the time when the owners wanted to sell it, you reached out to me again. We just spoke through different figures and numbers and what questions to ask them. And you went through all that. And then when you told me you actually owned it, I just went, awesome. And then it has just gone ahead in leaps and bounds since then.
Totally. Yeah. No, it's been great. I'm still living closer to that Simcoe clinic, but the commute has been absolutely fine. I enjoy going to work. I enjoy the clinic that I own, so I'm happy.
Yeah. An hour is nothing though. Anyone listening to this who's in a major city, especially I know Sydney and Melbourne, an hour to get to work is it's just what it is.
Yep, it's normal for sure.
Yeah, where I live in Cairns, if it takes more than 10 minutes, we get frustrated. Yeah, everything is only 10 minutes away. That's the way we like it. So why podiatry, and why did you choose to actually study in the UK?
Yeah, I think that I chose podiatry. Really, I was just interested in health medicine in general, but as most people around me know that I don't have a lot of patience, so I figured the whole medical school program, residency, I just didn't have time for that. I
Yeah.
wanted to jump in, get started with my career. So that led me to podiatry. And I joke too, keeping with that theme of having a small patience. I think podiatry is really cool because we can treat a patient and they can be a lot better even within one treatment or one session with me. So
It's
I
true.
found that really rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really
Um,
good part about podiatry. You can have someone come in with pain, depending specifically on what it is, but majority of patients, you can actually have them pain-free or reduced pain very quickly.
exactly. Yeah, it's great.
So you do get that instant dopamine hit. It's like being on social
Definitely.
media, but with patients. So, but why did you choose to study in the UK and not study in Canada?
I think that again goes back to my patience. In Canada, or at least in Ontario, the province that I live in, to get into podiatry or chiropody, we call it here still, they want you to do a 4-year general science degree
Yeah.
and then the 3 years of the chiropody podiatry program afterwards. But I found out I could go to the UK, get started in the program right after high school, and it was a 3-year program. And there's
Okay.
no limitations for me. I could come back, I could practice, and everything was fine.
But when you came back, you still had to do some extra courses, didn't you?
There was a board exam I had to write, and because I wanted to do injections and prescribe medication, I had to do little top-up courses, but it was no big deal.
So once you did the board registration, were you allowed to work straight away, or you had to do those prescribing rights and all that as well before you could actually start working?
I was allowed to work right away, but yeah, I couldn't prescribe or inject until I finished those courses. But to be honest with you, I think I finished them before I was even able to write my board exam. I think I had everything done all at the same time.
Okay. Where did you study in the UK?
I studied in Northampton.
Did you ever consider staying in the UK and working?
I did, but I graduated in 2020, so right as COVID was its
Yes.
peak.
Yeah.
So I was in that kind of special class where the last few months of my course
Yeah.
were almost dissolved. So before COVID hit, I was applying to jobs in the NHS or even looking at a couple different private clinics to work in, even just to work there for a year or two to get started, get some experience under me. But once COVID hit, I didn't know where things were going to sit. I knew a lot of different companies or even the hospital setting, they might not be so keen to offer me a visa
Yeah.
during COVID. So yeah, I just headed home.
Those COVID years, I reckon, as a student studying at that time, would have just, and things have all changed since then. Yeah, prior to that, everything was like you were always at the university, and then after that, it seemed to be so many things are now done online. And they don't have that same sort of interaction.
Absolutely. Well, my final exams were all online, and I don't think they had ever done that before. So they were trying to figure out how to run the exams online.
Yeah.
Um, but it all worked out in the end.
So, did you live in the UK for the whole 3 years full time?
I went back and forth a bit. I was able to come home for summers, so I came home for 3 or 4 months every summer. And every Christmas time, we had a bit of a break too. So I either came home for a week or two, or one year my family came over and visited me there, and we
Okay.
did some traveling around too. Yeah,
Yeah, UK is a cool place. I've always thought the UK was never an area that I had any interest in wanting to visit until I went there for the foot and ankle show. And the first time I went, it was a really quick visit, came back again, and it was raining. It was cold. I'm thinking, why do people live here? But then this year when I went, and Jonathan Small and I caught up, and we zoomed around and checked out all these different places. It was just sunshine, blue skies, still cold, but it is such an interesting place to travel around. easy to get around from one place to another. And now I have such a high respect for the UK and how interesting. I'm looking forward to going back again and checking more of it out over the next few years.
Nice. It's a great country. There's so much to see, and the nice part about it is so small, so you can get around really easily.
And you can get from one side, pretty much one part of the country to the other in a matter of a few hours.
Yeah, yeah.
So once you decided that you were going to leave the UK, go back to Ontario, and just to point out for people who do not understand the landscape of how podiatry works in Canada, it's a bit different to other parts of the world. Like in Australia, I can study in Queensland or in Brisbane in Queensland, and I can work anywhere in the country. Doesn't matter where I want to go. The UK, pretty much the same thing. Canada is a little bit different.
Yeah, the big thing here is that half the country has adopted the model that the US has with the DPM course,
Mm.
and the other half of the country has more so adopted the UK or the Australia model. So every province runs their own system, and it's really tough to work between each province or area of Canada.
That's bizarre. So in Vancouver, it's podiatrist, but they've all done the DPM course.
Yeah, that's right.
But in Ontario, everyone's a chiropodist and they've done the chiropody course, which is almost identical to the UK and Australian courses.
That's right. They brought it over from the UK back in the 70s or 80s. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, we call ourselves podiatrists and you can't, technically.
Exactly. Ontario is just a special province, though, where we're the only province that still uses the term chiropodist. So even the other areas of Canada that more so adopt the UK, the Australian model, I could go practice in those areas
Yeah.
and I'd be called a podiatrist there. But in Ontario, the politics are just so tense, they keep us at chiropodist, even though we still have the same rights.
I remember you telling me all this and I'm just trying to get my head around it going, and it must just be so frustrating sometimes.
It is. It's confusing to us. It's confusing to the public. It's not a great system.
So when you're talking to the average person on the street in Canada, do they know what a chiropodist is?
I would say it's pretty 50-50. I will say more people recognize the podiatry term, though.
Yeah.
If I meet someone on the street and they say, "What do you do for work?" If I say I'm a chiropodist, I usually have to back it up and say, like a podiatrist.
Okay. But if you just said I'm a podiatrist, most people would know what you're talking about, or 50% would.
I would say more. Yeah.
But you've got to say the podiatry part lower. I'm a chiropodist and also a podiatrist. Shh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In small brackets. I think it'll get better here. Right now, they're very strict with us. We can't use the podiatry title. We can't mention it anywhere. It's very strict.
So what would happen? I'm always curious. If I came to Canada, if I was in Ontario, I've come over from Australia, I have a podiatry degree, I'm in Ontario, and say I was going to run a marketing workshop, for example, would I be introduced as a podiatrist or a chiropodist?
I think they would introduce you as a podiatrist or anyone coming over to talk.
Yeah.
But if you set up shop, if you got a job here,
Yeah.
you could
Okay.
say, "I'm Tyson, I'm a podiatrist," or "I have a qualification in podiatry," but you would be called a chiropodist if you're working, if you're practicing.
Yeah, because you'd have to be registered and you'd be registering with the chiropody board, I assume.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, let's move ahead a little bit. You're now a qualified chiropodist, podiatrist, depending on where you're from. And you decided you were going to work in Hamilton. So that's where you were going to work full time. All of a sudden, the owners, won't go into the details, but the owners decided they wanted to sell it and go off to do something else. What made you decide buying the practice was a good idea? Because you're only young. You're only
Um,
24 at the time.
yeah, I was still young when I did buy the practice. I was not even 2 years into my career, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it's still pretty early on. And at that point, the previous owners of my clinic, they're wonderful people. They're so great. I keep in touch with them. when they were ready to sell, they had started to remove themselves from the practice. So I was already in the position with patients as the chiropodist, as kind
Yeah.
of the senior chiropodist there. So I think taking over just felt very natural. Patients were comfortable with me. I was very comfortable with the rest of the support team and staff. I knew already how the business was being ran. So it just felt like a really natural step to take over, actually.
So no nerves.
Definitely nerves, but I think I'm one of those people that I get an idea in my head and I just jump for it. My partner is constantly telling me, stop and think about this.
Yeah.
Spend a day, spend 2 days thinking about it. Whereas my mind's already, okay, what do I have to do? I'm already making it happen.
Yeah. And we had this conversation too, because when you reached out to me and said, oh, I have this opportunity. And then we were running through what are the figures, how much are they asking for the clinic, what's the turnover, what's the profit, what are you currently getting as a wage? And therefore and then we worked out, I think the profit that you were talking about was even after your wage was to go, wow, this is a really freaking good deal. It was a really good deal. And
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
when people hear, oh, if it sounds too good, it can't be true. No, yours was really good and it was actually true.
definitely. They'd built an amazing clinic and with a really good clientele that stuck around with me. So I'm lucky for sure.
But you've grown it heaps since then anyway, which has
I've
been,
made loads of changes.
yeah. So what were the main change when you took it over yourself, when you looked at the clinic, how it was running, what were the main things that you looked at and said, oh, these are things that I reckon I can change or improve upon?
I think that I was ready to improve the marketing, which I was really looking forward to working on actually.
Yeah.
I The clinic had a great reputation within the community with professional referrers, but I wanted to change the name. I wanted to change all my branding, get a new logo. I really enjoy that side of things, that side of the business, and I was ready to make it my own. So almost right away, actually, I changed the name, I changed the website,
What was it?
I
What was the
changed a
previous
lot of
name?
things.
What was the previous name?
It was their last name.
So straight away you knew when you took it over, you went, I'm going to change that to something else.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I was ready to change the name. Like I said, they had a great reputation, but it wasn't my last name, and I needed to make it my own.
Yeah. And the name you have now is not the name you originally changed it to either.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the other name? What was the original name you did?
I first named it Collective Foot and Wellness Clinic,
Okay.
which was great because I started
Which was
off and
better. Yeah.
yeah, and I brought in loads of other healthcare providers. We had a chiropractor, a physiotherapist, massage therapy, osteopathy. So we had a bunch of different services. So I made the name really wide and encompassing of all those things.
But then how long ago was it you changed your name? You changed your name again.
Not quite a year ago. Yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
a year after I took over, I changed the name again.
Yeah. Because we were talking about it and just said that because it's so broad, and we discussed where does your revenue come from? Where do you actually make money? Do you make it from the allied health people that are renting rooms, or do you make it from podiatry and orthotics?
And it was
Anyway,
podiatry and orthotics.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we were talking about your website, how your website was very broad, but if you narrowed it in a little bit more, people would get a better idea. So when you made that change to foot care and orthotics, straight away
Mhm.
your orthotic numbers improved. Funny enough.
Probably by double.
Yeah.
We were getting so many calls for orthotics. Yeah.
Yeah, I
That was
reckon there
great.
was, and that's what I like. What I love is how you took it from their name, you wanted to make it your own, so you changed your name. And the first name you came up was not a terrible name. It encompassed exactly what you were doing. But then narrowing the name down, it still has an effect. You still have the other allied health professionals in your clinic, don't you?
We do. Yeah,
Yeah. So it hasn't really affected them at all, but it's improved your business, and you're the one that's the most important.
exactly. Yes. Yep.
So I hope everybody heard that. Look at your business name and does it depict exactly what it is that you want?
Yeah, and the business name is such a big, important part of the business, but I don't think it's something that people should be afraid of changing.
Yeah. And the thing is, you also, like, you didn't just go from, like, obviously the first name change was from their surname to a better name that suited more of what you were doing. But the next change, you still kept part of it. So it was really just the ending. So the collective part was, it didn't change.
Yep. So, to be honest with you, none of our current patients have noticed. I don't think anybody's brought it up, but it's new patients that are noticing that they're recognizing the new name and they're understanding more what we do.
Yeah. And I also feel like looking at your website, it now talks more to the people that are looking for foot care and orthotics, not
Definitely.
overall wellness.
Definitely. Yeah. I noticed when we changed the name to Foot and Wellness, when it was so broad, we stopped getting a lot of referrals from family doctors and other professional referrers. And I think the name was just confusing. A Foot and Wellness could have been a spa, it could have
Yeah.
been anything. So changing the name again, I think was a good move.
Yeah. And we also discussed not putting property in the title too, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that was on the table for a long time. But again, it's the confusion. What is chiropody? What is podiatry? Short
Whereas,
and simple.
yeah, whereas foot care and orthotics, it makes sense. So regardless of whether you know the name chiropody or you know the name podiatry, you know what foot care is and you know what orthotics are.
Yeah,
So yeah, it
exactly.
just makes it nice and simple. So with the marketing side of things, what was it about marketing you always liked?
I always wanted just something of my own, I think.
Yeah.
My dad had a small construction business. And of course, I always looked up to that and the reputation that he built. So I think it was just cool to build my own clinic, my own reputation in the community. So I
Okay.
was excited to change even the colors of the rooms and our brochures and all those little things got me excited.
So okay, so you've been brought up watching your family have their own business.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's a huge influence. I think the main thing that made me want to have my own business was just having the flexibility. That if I want to have a day off, I don't have to ask permission.
yep.
I also worked for a lunatic that I wouldn't have put up with how I made myself work. I wouldn't have put up with that. I wouldn't have taken that from anyone else. And I think that's a crazy thing as a business owner. There's all the benefits, but sometimes we need to look after ourselves a bit more.
For sure. It's easy to get wrapped up in the business and overwhelmed, for sure.
But the one thing I will say about you, you've always had a really positive outlook. You're never down in the dumps. Like you're always very uplifting and positive, which I think would reflect in your clinic and reflect with people that work for you.
I think so. We were talking today how no one's ever heard me yell before. I don't know if I've ever yelled in my life.
Yeah, well, usually, like I'll have certain coaching clients, I'll be talking to them and they will occasionally show a little bit of frustration or swear or something like that. Never seen you do it. Just you're so calm all the time, far
Yeah.
calmer than me.
Most people would say that around me.
Yeah,
That's who I am, for better or
yeah,
for worse.
that's a good thing though. Yeah, don't change that. Keep that going. And you've never had any problems finding team members either, have you?
Um, I think the common struggle is finding podiatrists,
Yeah.
chiropodists to work, but I've had a pretty solid team from day one, which has been great. And yeah, I haven't had a whole lot of headaches so far, knock on wood, but it's been good.
Yeah, but I do think having a positive attitude, even if some things, just I know you've told me that certain things haven't always gone to plan,
Sure.
and there's been little hiccups, but you've just accepted it for what it is and haven't dwelled on it. You've just moved on to okay, well, what's next?
Definitely. Yeah. I think that goes back to having a positive outlook. I just know somehow things are going to work out, and they usually do.
That's true. So when you were taking that risk at such a young age to take over that business, did you talk to your parents who had their own businesses? Were they encouraging you, yeah, go for it? What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, I think they thought I'd be stupid if I didn't do it,
Yeah,
really. They were only encouraging from the start. Yeah. And they've been great. They've supported me a lot since I've got started.
that's fantastic. And there's another
Yeah.
point, anyone who's listening to this, I think it's really important to remember who is in your circle of friends. Who's the people that like you associate with, the people you talk to, the people you get advice from. And I would say never take business advice from people who don't own a business because they will usually tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. Oh, this could happen. What if this happens? Oh, you got a nice safe income here. You're going to tie yourself down. What if it doesn't work? Whereas usually people that have had businesses, had successful businesses, will always see the positive. So I think if anyone listening to this, you're thinking about buying somebody else's practice, taking it over, or setting up your own, is make sure you got some positive people on your side that can talk you through it.
Definitely. Yeah. I it's really the best decision I've ever made, I think. And yeah, I'd encourage anyone to do the same. Start their own business. But it's not for everyone either, right? We're always
Yeah.
on. We're always at the first call if something goes wrong. Um, yeah.
But yeah, the other part I think is important though is going way back when you were working in the two locations, you could have stayed with the soft option, stayed in Simcoe, close to home. It was an easier job. You didn't have to stretch yourself as much. And that would have been the really softer option. Whereas you took the harder option, which was an hour away, probably had to learn a lot more responsibility. But in the end, that actually paid off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So anyone listening, don't cut corners. Don't take soft options. We see it all the time in Queensland where I am. Majority of the population is in southeast Queensland, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast area. So many people that do podiatry are from that area. When they graduate, there's so many jobs outside of southeast Queensland, like in regional and rural areas, great opportunities. There's places where people have had practices there 20, 25 years who may be looking at selling. But so many of the podiatrists take this safe option of, oh, no, I don't want to, yeah, my boyfriend's still here, my girlfriend's still here, my family's here. They don't want to just stretch themselves a little bit, take on a bit of discomfort. But in the end, it could really pay off.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's great opportunities everywhere, and some people aren't as willing to chase them, I think.
But I will be honest, when I graduated, I was soft. But I've got to own up to that. I stayed in southeast Queensland. I went to the Gold Coast, went to take a job there, didn't end up taking it, ended up working for myself. I had a hand problem, was off of work for 2 years. When I decided I was going to work again, I was still looking at southeast Queensland, but the head of the podiatry department, I'd spoken to him, Alan Crawford, and he said, I don't know why all you guys just keep wanting to stay in southeast Queensland. There's so many opportunities out of this area. So I went 1,800 kilometers north to Cairns and never looked back. Best decision ever made.
Nice. Not an easy one either. I'm sure most of your
No,
family was down in that area.
all my family is still in southeast Queensland. Good part is
Right.
now is it's a 2 hour flight, so I can catch up with them anytime I want.
That's easy. Yeah.
So I think people just got to sometimes take the risk, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you'll normally find if it's a well calculated, thought out risk, it usually does work out.
I agree. Absolutely.
So now you've got the clinic, you've had it for a couple of years now, it's growing heaps, everything's moving along fine, you're loving the marketing side of things, and you recently purchased a 3D printer.
Yeah,
Why
got
did you go down
going.
that path?
Um, I've always been a little bit techie, a little bit nerdy with things like that. I got a little bit frustrated with some of the orthotic labs that we had been dealing with, I think, and some of them promising certain time frames and a certain quality of product that weren't always being delivered. So I was hearing more and more about 3D printed orthotics, and I just thought that would be amazing, have that in the office. and it would just give me control over that whole process.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, how have you found it so far having it? Because it hasn't been that long, has it?
No, it's just been a few months now, but I've gotten the hang of it. A bit of a learning curve to start, but I can now see someone in the morning and I could have their orthotics done by that afternoon.
Yeah. What was the
And I
biggest
think
learning
that's
curve?
really the biggest learning curve was designing the orthotic in
Okay.
the CAD/CAM software. The program that I've been using is really quite easy and user friendly, but sometimes you hit print and the product that is made isn't quite what you imagined it would be. It's just figuring out what to expect and what the final product will actually look like. I think that was my struggle with it.
Okay. How many times would you say you made mistakes until you went, I'm actually really happy with what I've done here?
Oh, I probably made 20 or 30 pairs before I gave one to my first patient.
Okay.
Yeah. And then even to start, I was only using the 3D printer maybe 10% of the time. I just made a few a week with the 3D printer and I followed these patients very closely. How are you liking it? How are you feeling in them? And once I started getting some really good feedback, that's when I kicked things up. And all of the orthotics that I'm doing now are with the 3D printer.
So you've totally switched over now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And what's interesting is, like you said, you made 20 or 30 pairs before you started using one patients. They don't cost you a huge amount to make either. So
No,
I
the
know, if
materials,
some people are thinking, oh, 20 or 30 pairs, oh, that's a lot of expense. It's not a lot of expense for a 3D printer.
no. It's an investment up front, of course, for the machines, but ongoing, the materials per device, it's going to work out in my favor in the end, I think.
Yeah, don't think you go back to using a lab?
I don't think so. No, no. Now that I've gotten the hang of this, I really like the final product. And no, I've been quite happy.
I can see this being the way of the future for podiatry. Actually, I hope this is the way of podiatry in the future, that eventually, under most circumstances, using an orthotic lab will be a thing of the past. Most people will have a 3D printer in the clinic set up in one way or another. There might be one 3D printer, there might be multiple clinics all using their own. That they go there and they just go and pick them up, but it's more local. You're not having to
Yeah,
make patients wait 2 weeks or a week to get their orthotics, even if it's the next day. I can see that's where podiatry has to move if they want to keep owning the orthotic space.
I agree. And it's a much better product to offer a patient who comes in with foot pain that you know needs an orthotic. It's an easier conversation to say, I can have your orthotics ready for you tomorrow or this afternoon, rather than you have to wait 2 weeks. When I have those conversations with patients, or when I used to, if someone came in with a sore foot, I would say, okay, we can get you started with some orthotics. They're gonna be 2 weeks before they're ready. And the patients would look at me and say, 2 weeks, what am I supposed to do for 2 weeks? And of course, we have other options. We have
Yeah.
shockwave injections, the list goes on. But it's really powerful to say that we can have these orthotics ready for you tomorrow.
Yeah. I found the same thing. We didn't have a 3D printer, we had a milling machine. The time we set it all up, and I remember setting the whole thing up, I think at the time it cost us $75,000 to set it up. But at the time, our lab fees were about 100 grand a year.
Yeah.
So to set up something that costs 75,000 straight away, we were saving 25 grand in that first year. And then everything after that just kept leaving more profits in the business itself. I think the initial investment, yes, it's always going to cost you a bit, but work out if you borrow that money, what else? If you've got that money sitting there, what other return are you going to get? I just think 3D printers is an easy option. The milling machine was loud. That was the only problem with it. It was really
Oh,
loud, but I know they've
right.
improved.
Yeah. And the 3D printer is cool. I know it takes a little bit longer than the milling machines would to make the pair. It takes about an hour for my 3D printer to finish a pair. but we have them set up right in the waiting room so people can watch the orthotics being made as they're waiting for the appointments. So
I
all
thought,
day I
yeah,
get questions about it, questions about the machines, or even just foot care patients asking me about it or telling me it's cool to see the orthotics being made.
yeah. I remember when we were talking about that. I said, yeah, put it in the reception area because it'd be more
Yeah.
entertaining than a fish tank,
Yeah, absolutely.
and it will make you far more money having that in the reception area set up the right way. Because I know if I walked into a clinic and there's a 3D printer doing something, I would have to ask questions. You couldn't just sit there and go,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's interesting, and not ask anything about it. And that would then spark a whole conversation. And then they know when you're talking about things, they've already seen how it's being made.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some great conversations with people who haven't even been orthotic cases of mine. They've come in for other reasons and they've been 3D printing enthusiasts or hobbyists, and they've given me awesome tips and wanted to see the whole process from start to finish. So it's 3D printing in general is just a cool sector to be in.
Yeah. And it's clean. It's much cleaner than milling.
Yeah, yeah,
But I remember
quiet
even when
too.
we had the milling machine, I remember patients would hear the slight humming noise going and they'd be asking, what's that? And I go, oh, it's the milling machine. So I'd take them in there to have a look. And they were just like, oh, this is so cool. And so they knew when you were talking about orthotics, they knew what was happening in the background, how it was being made. But yeah, I love the 3D printer, how it's quiet, it's clean. It's an hour is still pretty fast.
Yeah, it's not too bad. No, an hour is pretty good.
Because I remember years ago, you had to put them on overnight before you left for work. And therefore, there's only a limit on how many you could make unless you had a second printer.
Right.
So since you've taken over the clinic, okay, you've got the 3D printer that wasn't there. What other toys did you introduce or services that weren't there when you took the business over?
I brought in the other wellness services, the physiotherapist, chiropractor, and massage, an osteopath. And actually, we have a reflexologist now too. And they're doing great. They all have busy schedules. They all work kind of part-time for me, which
Yeah.
is ideal. And it's been a nice compliment though for patients. We've had a lot of cross referrals between the services, and yeah, people have been interested in it.
Are they working for you or is it their own business and they just pay you rent?
They are working for me all as associates. So
Okay.
I keep a percentage of their billings and I provide the reception services and the room and yeah, bookkeeping for them too.
So you're like the Godfather. You're the
Mm.
you're the puppet master.
Maybe a little
Yeah.
bit.
And you enjoy it though. You're enjoying that side of things.
Yeah, I
Running
do.
the business, coming up with different ideas, watching the business grow, which I think is great. I think you've got to enjoy what you're doing, or there's no point doing it.
It's been great. And it's been 2 years now, and I've gotten to the point now where I can just slowly reduce my actual clinical hours, my time
Yeah.
with patients. So I have at least a day or a day and a half a week now where I can really focus and work on the business side of things, which has been really big for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. And that's the other part, point out to people too. You've been working yourself while this whole process has been going on. It's not as though you bought the business and just sat back and counted the money. You were actually in there working with patients at the same time.
Yeah, I've been treating patients full time since I started. Yeah, until now.
And then you opened up a second clinic in Simcoe.
Yes. Yeah. I did. Just a small practice. And recently I moved it actually from Simcoe to Port Dover, which is only about 10 minutes down the road. But
Yeah.
I have a nice little spot there close to home. I just work a day and a half there a week, and it's mostly orthotic cases I see. It's been really nice.
So with the original clinic that was in Simcoe where you were working, is that still there with the same owner or they end up selling it or what did they do?
It's still there. I know they're quite busy, which is great. She's been
Mm.
there a long time.
Like you said, there's no
Um,
ill feeling when you left either. It wasn't as though you go, oh, I'm going to leave for whatever reason. You're not that sort of person.
no, no, I don't think we ended on bad terms. Yeah, there was three of us there working with her, and we've actually all gone off and done separate things now.
Yeah. When you can normally tell a good employer is when you decide you're going to leave, they don't get the shits that you're leaving. Now, they might be disappointed. Like I had people work with me. Yeah, if somebody left, I was disappointed they left. But rarely did you ever get shitty with them because it's like,
No,
especially some of them who I knew were going to have their own practices and were going to do really well from it because they just had the right attitude.
uh, right now I have a chiropodist working for me. Her name is Rachel, and I
Yeah,
consider Rachel a really close friend actually. Now, we did a course in Amsterdam together this summer, which was amazing.
yeah.
But she's just starting her own clinic, just part-time. And I know in the back of my mind that eventually she'd like to work full-time for herself. But I've told her from day one when she told me that do what you have to do, what you want to do. There will never be hard feelings.
Mm. Yeah, that's
So
good.
I'm
That's a good
excited for her.
attitude. Okay, so
Sure.
you mentioned you went to Amsterdam, which is great. So this is probably the last question before we wrap up, but how important do you find it is to go along to conferences, other events? Like we met face to face in Chicago when I did a marketing workshop. So how important do you find it is just to get out of the clinic and go and learn, do continuing education?
It's super important. Done loads of courses and been to
Mm,
lots of conferences. I'm lucky that way. And I think learning more of the clinical side of things or the business side of things with these courses, it's just as important as connecting with other people in the profession and making connections. Yeah, networking, it's amazing. I've met some awesome people. I mentioned I did a course in Amsterdam, and
yeah.
we actually sat down next to a podiatrist who practices only about an hour away from us in Canada. And we spent a lot of the trip with him, and we became quite close with him, which is a hilarious coincidence, but you never know where you'll meet people.
Well, when you did the marketing workshop when we caught up in Chicago and Mike Donato was there, and at the time he was the president of the American Academy of Podiatric Sports Medicine. And that the best thing when you go to any event, the people you meet and the friends that you can connect with, and then, as I pointed out to you, Ben, try and maintain those networking relationships. But the thing is, the good part is you can bump into again 5, 10 years time. And as soon as you bump into them, knowing that you spend a certain amount of time together, maybe had a beer or something like that afterwards, that friendship just stays there forever.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
People I know who never go to conferences, just sit in a clinic and they just stay there and they get bitter and twisted over the years. And they go, I have no friends in the profession. You got to get out. You got to leave the confines of your clinic.
Definitely. Yep. Have to get out there, be open to learning new skills, be open
Mm.
to meeting new people. I think that's very important. And it's usually mandatory for most governing bodies, and that's for a reason.
Okay, last thing is with the Ontario Society of Chiropodists,
Yeah.
you're now helping them out. You're part of the conference committee that they do each year.
Yeah, I just recently joined their board of directors. I think they've put me in charge of education and courses that they're going to be running.
Mm.
I haven't been too involved yet, but I'm excited to get started with that.
And they have their conference every year.
Yep.
I'll put a link in the notes to their society. So if anyone wants to keep in touch of when those conferences are on, because it's always good. I think doing overseas conferences even better than doing them in your own country sometimes.
Definitely. And usually you can get a bit of a tax break from doing it. So
Yes,
why
and a
not?
holiday.
Come visit. Yeah.
Okay, Ben, I want to thank you for coming on the Podiatry Legends podcast. This has been fun. Like I said, we've known each other for a few years now, but it's great getting you on here because I thought some of the things you've done at such a young age, I just think there's a lot of younger podiatrists who will actually hear this and look up to you and be inspired by what you're doing.
Thank you. That's really nice of you to say that. Of
So I look forward to talking again soon.
course. You too.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
Thank you, Tyson. Bye.